Welcome back to the next session of the Centre Court Executive MBA Festival, a day where, of course, we get to catch up with the world's top EMBA programs from North America, from Europe, from all over the world, and of course also the alumni and this transformational impact that they've had, both their professional lives undoubtedly, but their personal lives too, as they talk about the sense of purpose and the career moves, sometimes the transitions that they were able to make. At the heart of all of that, of course, where it fits in with you as you think about next steps. Now, not all of us were 25 and we decided to run off to do our full-time MBA. And I'm actually, with all these grey hairs, I'm really reassured that there are still programs for us. We're all forever students, deep in our hearts and very curious. And the Exec MBA is certainly an extraordinary opportunity to explore that sense of purpose. So for the next session, we're going to be looking at where an EMBA can take your career. And to discuss that, three of the top US schools, it's lovely to welcome Mary Gray Jacobson. Mary Gray is from the Fuqua School at Duke. She's the program director of the Career Management Center. And from the McDonough School at Georgetown, we've got Denise Durgan. Denise is an assistant dean for both graduate and executive degree programs. And again, the Career Center, it's the McDonough Career Center that will be bringing all of that experience. And then Danielle Rubenstein, who's joining us from the Goizueta School in Emory. So Danielle is the Senior Director of Career Management. Now, perhaps big picture, because I always had this idea, a company might send you off for the Exec MBA and then you'd come back and continue to work your way to the C-suite. But all of you have that sense of careers in your backgrounds, in your job titles. It's certainly something that I'd love to discuss. But let's find out more about the programs first. And Mary Gray, if I can turn to you with a general introduction, perhaps about Fuqua, but certainly the different options that are available at the Executive MBA level.
Yeah, absolutely, Matt. Thanks so much for having me. And it's so great to be here with Denise and Danielle. So we have two executive MBA programs for our working professionals. We have the weekend executive and then the global executive MBA. And our weekend program follows a pretty traditional standard format. It is 18 months. Students are on campus every month, one weekend a month, and then doing hybrid classes the rest of the term. So really a standard, typical weekend executive MBA program. And we recently, over the last few years, changed the format. It used to be you had to be on campus every other weekend. And so now that we are once a month, we actually have a really unique population of students from all across the country, coming from the West Coast as well. Our global MBA, executive MBA program is such a gem. Our students travel internationally every 3 months to different locations, and we pick up and we take our students and our faculty and we meet internationally. And so this year, the global class is traveling to Bangkok, Thailand, New Delhi in India, Santiago in Chile, and Berlin in Germany. And so they are in classes about 8 days straight in those regions. And then the rest of the time, they are doing online classes for the duration of that program. So it's a really neat way to get your MBA. And while you're in these regions around the world, we're doing corporate visits and visits with alumni, and the CMC, our Career Management Center, travels down with them and does programming. So just a fun way for students from all over the world to gather and get their MBA.
What a fantastic, so many students, perhaps their undergrad experience was more local, more domestic, and suddenly you're taking them off to Southeast Asia. Now, of course, DC is a very international town, Denise, anyway, and you have many international partnerships with schools in Spain and elsewhere in the world. How have you approached the delivery of the Exec MBA at McDonough?
Oh, certainly. So we are a 21-month program at McDonough, 54 credits. We're the oldest Jesuit university in the country. And the reason I bring that up is because we really focus on the whole person. It's part of our Jesuit values, Curia Personalis, and that starts from the very beginning. We've got 2 global residencies, a capstone project that's overseas, as well as a consulting project. And then we recently, within the last few weeks, we've changed our format. So we have an all-day synchronous session on Saturday, and then a couple of weeks later, it's a Friday through Sunday lunch classroom weekend. So that affords our students for the class of 2026 It affords more flexibility, being that they're taking one less PTO day on Friday, and it also adds to the diversity of the cohort, being that we would imagine that more people from around the country would be able to enroll in our program. With the new format, we also increased our electives. So our degree program is very personalized, and it went from 7 electives to 10 electives. And so from a Career Center standpoint, I do have students that reach out to me and ask me their thoughts, and I get to know them through the coaching program that we have, which I can talk about later. But I'm also an alum at the school, so for me, it's like being back home. It just feels really good to support the students. So I'm just really happy to be here with Mary Gray and Danielle to talk about our executive program.
I'm sure we'll be talking about how the curriculum continues to reflect an evolving business landscape, whether it's artificial intelligence, the future of fintech. But Danielle, already with what Mary Gray and Denise have been describing, the delivery of the program also reflects that busy working professional and how it then adapts to their life. So how have you approached that at Goizueta?
Yeah, so similarly, we have really taken a look at what makes the most sense for these busy working professionals. And so we actually offer 3 formats now, one hybrid, online, or in person. And it's a 20-month program. It's every other weekend if it's in person. Online is going to be fully virtual. And then the hybrid, they get to choose, how much time they spend on campus versus virtual. So a lot of the things that they've already talked about with that program, it's really geared towards helping executives elevate, in their leadership, understand the skills that are relevant in the marketplace. One thing that I would say that's unique about Goizueta is we have a retired Lieutenant General that's on our staff, Ken Keene, and we do a leadership reaction course at Fort Moore as an introduction to the program. And it's a pretty incredible experience. Learn a lot about themselves in that first get-go and really understand, what it's like to work in a team environment and how they react under pressure and stress and use that information throughout the rest of the program. So that's just something that's unique to Goizueta, but the other programs are wonderful. And like they said, I'm really happy to be here with Denise and Mary Gray as well.
So you can bring them an international context. You can bring them that sense of purpose. You can also bring them this leadership journey through the different programs. I suppose as individuals are thinking about their different business education choices, I once wrote an article about the over 30s applying to the full-time MBA, which has been read by over 315,000 people. So we weren't all 25 and heading off to business school. But Mary Gray, when you're talking with applicants, how are you thinking as a school about not age per se, but perhaps the sort of experience that you want them to bring to these very enriching classroom discussions?
Yeah, it's really interesting because over the past few years, and I'm sure Danielle and Denise have seen some of this, but we've seen the shift of this typical student profile changing. And so really what we're looking for is students that bring breadth and depth. And so sometimes that means students that have always wanted to get their MBA and they're 55 and they don't need necessarily a career pivot or an advancement, but also those that are looking to make a significant pivot or change in their late 30s, to those that are in their late 20s that have got 7 to 8 years of experience, who have really, really great day jobs and don't want to leave them to take the time away to get their MBA, but want the MBA experience and are able to do that through an executive MBA program. So really what we're looking for is students that just bring an interest and a desire to make a change and to do better in their work.
So, I mean, Denise, following on from what Mary Gray just said, it's not that there's any one specific time, but think about when is the right time for you.
Oh, certainly. Well, I agree with what Mary Gray said, that the diversity is so important with our students. And I think it's just really comes down to the person. And you could have somebody that is later in age, but has a desire to move on and take a global role. And so having this executive MBA program with the global component to it through the residencies is important and helps validate those skills through the work that they do. On the other hand, you might have somebody that is younger in age, late 20s or 30s, and might be an entrepreneur and is interested in learning the business side of running their business. We also have roughly 32% of our student population are military because of our location to the Pentagon and to all the government agencies. And so they certainly get a lot of information and academics around the topic of leadership, but to bring that into the other coursework that they have, I think really elevates their stance within the military, and we're so honored to help serve them. So it really depends on the person and what their goals are. Many do want to pivot. Many are interested in this word you used earlier, transformation. They're thinking that they're very happy compensation wise, et cetera, but they feel unfulfilled. And I think all of us will probably have these conversations with students that they're looking to move on. So really, truly, it just comes down to the right person and the right fit.
With that breadth of diversity, Danielle, it's not that you want to see a particular job title on the resume or a particular company. I mean, do they need to have managed a certain number of people, or can they be in a technical role and now looking to build those leadership skills?
Yeah, great question. I agree with everything that Denise and Mary Gray have already said. And there isn't a specific criteria that's looked at. It really is based on the individual and what they're bringing to the cohort and what their goals are. And so it really is about like, how are they articulating their goals? What is their background? Are they an entrepreneur and have built something from scratch? And how is that going to add to the broader class makeup? So many people are coming back to expand their network as well, their leadership, one thing that Goizueta, I didn't mention this earlier, is we have a global experiential module. So you travel with your cohort to a country and learn about the business practices of that particular country. So it's how it's all going to gel together. And so and I agree, Mary Gray, the student profile has changed. It used to be with executive MBA programs, they might just be looking to elevate within their companies. Now, so many of them are looking to make these career pivots. And so we've adjusted based on that.
Right. Well, picking up on that, and my idea 20, 30 years ago of a company might send 15 or 20. Are you seeing, Mary Gray, there are many more self-financed individuals that themselves want to use this to make a pivot, that, as Danielle was describing?
Yeah, see Danielle and Denise shaking their heads, but yes, that has also changed, where corporate sponsorship is very few and far between in terms of employer sponsorship. Now, there are definitely some companies who will support it in certain ways or offer a significant amount of compensation, but also we often call that the golden handcuffs, in which you might be tied down to your employer for a certain amount of time. But yes, we are seeing more and more students who are just wanting to do this on their own, and they're taking out making the commitment and the sacrifices that it takes to both financially commit and time. I mean, it's a significant amount of time when they're already competing with a day job and their life outside of school and work. But yes, certainly fewer and fewer companies are sponsoring, and students are making the investment in themselves to take this on.
And without the golden handcuffs, Mary Gray, that you were describing, does that also mean, we talked earlier, career management is part of all of your roles at your respective schools. So is there now a level of career accompaniment that perhaps you wouldn't have found 20 years ago in an executive MBA program?
An interesting thought. And I think, I don't think our roles have necessarily shifted, because I think we just kind of go with what the student needs and wants are. And those vary depending on whether their company is sponsoring them or not. Many want to stay with their company that are getting sponsored and move up. And some of those are saying, hey, you know what, I'm going to break those handcuffs and leave within a year. And so I think our services are really are tailored specifically to the individual's goals and helping them define them and then strategize and execute.
In a session that we had earlier, Denise, we were talking with London Business School and HEC Paris from Europe, and they were saying, for many of our students, this is actually the first time that they would have had any form of coaching. And then there was a sporting analogy, that typically athletes, they're coached, but not necessarily in business. So this is probably a component that is a discovery as part of the journey that an EMBA student is taking.
Oh, absolutely. So at McDonough and through our executive MBA program, when I started in the program, there were 4 executive coaches, and I've expanded that to 12 coaches, including myself. So we have specialty in finance and entrepreneurship. We have a coach that specializes in military transitions. We have marketing, nonprofits. We have some that just focus on leadership, others that just focus on career pivots. And it is interesting because many people outside of even the school, even in the school setting, they look at a coach on an athletic field or something and use that analogy. And really, I'm a certified executive coach myself, and I coach the students, and it's really all about digging deep and having the self-discovery of what is it really that I want to do. And we do that through the coaching process. Also, before the students start, we survey them on what would you like to hear from the Career Center. And so we're able to deliver more personalized approach that way versus telling them what we think they want to know. And through that, we've gotten great feedback that coaching really is a specialty that the students are interested in, because they know that they have these sessions. They can be 30 minutes, they can be an hour, they can be 90 minutes. And that is very customized to the students. So we get high marks. That's really our signature program within McDonough for supporting the students.
Right. The Atlanta region headquarters any number of S&P 500, Fortune 500 companies, Danielle. So, there's someone that says, I don't know, I'm already a VP, or I'm, looking at these senior roles. I've achieved a lot already in my career. So, going back to business school, am I really going to need this? Is that self-reflection and perhaps taking stock of the career that you've had, but next steps that you really then want to deep down pursue? Is that a whole part of this process?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I really agree with what both of them have already said about that individualization, because it's so important to hear where each person's coming from. It's going to vary. It's going to be different depending on what their goals are, what their life stage is. I think of career development as really a triangle of your interests, your skills, and your values. That's a very simplified way of looking at it, but really tapping into each of those components. And oftentimes in our office, we use a matrix that really helps them define, here are the things that are most important to me at this stage of my life, and how do these different paths I'm investigating map to each of those areas, and having those robust discussions about that. So yeah, if somebody is in that self-reflection phase of, here is where I am, there's something missing, there's something they're looking for. What is that? And how do we explore and really understand what that is?
Right. Now, I'm just going to stop on that point, Danielle, because I love triangles. Greek philosophers love triangles. So this triangle looks at skills, experience,
interests and values.
Right, great. Now, readers, viewers, whether you're watching this live with us or afterwards, perhaps reflecting on each of those components of the triangle. A big part, Mary Gray, is this extraordinary cohort and classmates, the bigger network that you're then involved with. And all three schools perhaps have thought through the pandemic of the accelerated hybrid, but already meeting every other weekend or every few weeks. How do you ensure that level of connectivity? One of our viewers has written in to say, whether it's hybrid or global, how do you ensure that the student experience is really connective?
Yeah, so through career services, it's really about connecting people that have similar goals and interests, and we do that through specific tailored programming. I will say at Duke, I'm here with very well-known brands, and the Duke Fuqua brand is really based on Team Fuqua. And so a lot of the assignments and work done within the classes is teamwork. And so that's a big component of the Fuqua experience. I would say it amazes me every time, but these cohorts, they develop these incredible relationships because they're in this together, and they're trying to make it through accounting, and they're trying to ace an interview, and they're trying to find a babysitter so they can have a date night once a month. I mean, so they're in the trenches together. And so these experiences that they're having, they just align so well. And it's really incredible to see, because they just develop these close-knit friendships that really turn into lifelong relationships, and they help each other. We see it time and time again. Alum are helping other students coming through the program and want to connect them with jobs and connect them with people. So it's really that network. It's something that you start and you build, and it just continues to flourish.
Denise, this might be a tough question, but as I think about the solidarity, that level of support, do you think 10 years, 15 years into your career, you're even more acutely aware of how valuable that is. And you know, but both being able to ask for support, but of course the very proactive nature at McDonough and the other schools of how your classmates are all sort of rooting for each other.
Yes, I think that I think it happens at different stages within the program. For some, it happens right away when they are working in groups and they are trying to navigate each of the person's different schedules. As Mary Gray mentioned, someone might have children and need to put to bed, but then others might be a morning person and want to work in the morning, but that's not going to work. And so I think at some point, probably midway through for some that I hear from, that they do really appreciate the fact that they're learning these other interpersonal skills in addition to the academic side. And of course, we can support that too through the career centers. And I'm sure my colleagues have the same, examples. So I do think that there's an appreciation, but I would have to say at the finish line after graduation and then reflecting, I think it really starts to crystallize like, wow, this was an incredible feeling. I mean, I have goosebumps talking about it. Just the class of 23 just finished and re-engaging with me and talking about different things that they're doing and wanting to help other Hoyas. I mean, it's just, I think it really does hit the right at the finish line. So,
right. And Danielle, perhaps some of the students have kids. You're juggling family, work, and commitments, lots of commitments at work, and then you bring studies back into the picture. So there's a lot of juggling, clearly worthwhile. But just sort of as they start the program, the advice that you'll give them to be able to prioritize and find that balance.
Yeah, that's something we talk about all the time, especially in our admission sessions. That's a question that comes up, and we'll bring in current students that really share their perspective on what that's like. But it's about asking for help. It's about clearly communicating. It's about setting boundaries, and it's about those relationships. So, one student I know that comes to our admission sessions always says, listen, tell your family you'll see them in 20 months. He's joking. But it's really, listen, I want to carve out this particular time on Sundays. This is going to be our family time that we are going to stay committed to. And I'm going to let my team know from the onset that it's something that we're committed to, and we're going to work through this together. One thing they do at Goizueta is they create team charters. So each semester you rotate, and it may be very similar at the other schools too. Each semester they rotate onto a different team, and each team creates a charter around what are they agreeing to, what are communication standards, and how are they best going to work together, and if there is conflict, how do they work through that. So they do that at the very beginning, and those are some of the non-negotiables that they share. And usually, like Mary Gray was describing, the relationships that are developed by the end of this program are amazing. They're family. And so it's really about establishing that from the beginning, this is going to be an intense time in your life, well worth it, but very intense. And so setting out those clear priorities and really communicating about those, asking for help, and having those non-negotiables is important.
Right. We saw it through the pandemic, Mary Gray. All three of your schools have made such tremendous efforts as we think about gender balance in different programs. But time is scarce. It's perhaps one of the reasons why women have looked at the Exec MBA and hesitated. How do you like to reassure them, both in the investment that they're making in themselves without sacrificing other priorities that they have?
Yeah, it's tough. It's a balancing act, but it can be done, and it is done. And so I think it's really, just as Danielle mentioned, kind of prioritizing and working and communicating effectively, both with your team and your classmates and your family and your priorities outside of school. And so I think with the right amount of planning and understanding and if students have questions and what does this really look like? I mean, we connect you with alumni and we do panels and things like that so you really get the full picture of what this is like and what those that consider success and how they succeed. I mean, some might say, hey, you know what, I'm not really focused on my high pass. I'm focused on getting through this this class because I have a really challenging work problem that I'm working on for the next 3 months. And so my focus is really on my work outside of school and balancing that with your classmates and your teammates. And so I think it's absolutely possible, but just requires some planning and organization.
Right. And a very honest, I mean, all of you, you know,
Yeah.
the level of sort of honesty, candor that I think you must bring to those discussions. Denise, you know, the entrepreneur that says, you know, I'm devoted to my business. I know that the business schools, it would be a great time to, you know, to build my bench strength of business skills. But the same thing for the entrepreneur of helping them to understand how this will be such a great long-term investment for anything that they're looking to build.
Yes, I think I would just, go back to what Mary Gray and Danielle said about the alumni and reaching back out to entrepreneurs that have taken the program and have graduated and what was their experience like. We also have an entrepreneurship center at Georgetown, right in McDonough School of Business. They present to the students. They're very interactive with our students. And so we have the ability to support from that perspective too, as well as our executive coaches. Many of them are entrepreneurs running their own executive and career coaching business. So they have certainly a sense of what it takes to do both the academic side plus run the business. So I think we're really well supported in that area. And I think I would just mention one final thing about the going back to just juggling the priorities through the coaching program and through these one-on-one conversations, just really looking at there's a tool, the life wheel, and what are the values that are most important to me. So I think that adds to the self-discovery, because it's not just you then know, okay, these are really the deal breakers for me. And then maybe 80% is the new 100%, and to take that pressure off of yourself, man or woman, that this is what it's going to take. So just wanted to mention that too. Hope that's okay.
That's great, great. And an alumni reunion 10 years on, Danielle, do they remember the classes on global supply chain or, entering market strategy? Or is it, perhaps just this mirror that you've held up to them, and we talked about values, their sense of self. What do they tend to sort of come back with 10 years later and say, this was, the moment that really transformed me?
Yeah, great question. And I think it would vary. They remember the professors more than they remember the actual content of the class. They will remember the professors and what they learned about from those professors. What's so nice about an executive MBA is you're immediately applying it to your work. And so in those robust discussions that they have in the classroom, they can take some examples and say, I did something differently in my job the next day. So that's, I think, what they really remember is those pivotal career moments. And then what I find, and Mary Gray and Denise, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, is that they have the best of intentions when they enter the program about making this major career pivot, right? And so they may start off strong in those first 2 months of coming and meeting with the Career Management Center. And then they are completely inundated and life gets in the way. And so then it's like maybe every few months they come, and, then it gets into the March of their graduating year and they're like, oh my gosh, I've got to really focus in on this at this point. And so I see you all nodding. And then, this is a cycle. So we're always busy. It's just where they are in the program. And so, I try to reassure them when they come to that place of, you have time after you graduate to really focus in on your career. It's never too late to make a change. And so when you're asking about 10 years out, some of them may have just made a change a few years before, not immediately after graduation. So there's a lot of different things that come to their minds in reunion, but they remember their relationships with their classmates. They remember their professors, and they remember all the things they were able to learn and apply immediately.
Right. You were both nodding, Denise and Mary Gray. Similar sort of, it's almost like the arc of a Hollywood movie, right? Of the different moments that then lead to graduation. Mary Gray, do you see very similar sort of cycles that emerge? But also Danielle's comment about how they're then putting this into practice, 5 years, 10 years later.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, we definitely have those gung-ho students who come in and week 1, week 2, they are ready to make a change. And unless someone is really absolutely miserable in their day job, we really actually encourage, hey, take these first 3 months, be curious, get to know your classmates, get to know your professors, you might take a class 6 months from now that really hits in on something that you never knew you had an interest in. And so really encouraging them to be curious. But historically, students weren't changing jobs until 12, 18 months post MBA. I mean, we always say your value proposition continues to increase the further along you are to the finish line. The job market 2 years ago was so hot. We were seeing students change so much more frequently during the program than we had ever seen before. And that certainly has slowed down within the last 6 to 9 months. But yes, absolutely. I mean, students are coming back 5, 10 years, 15 years from now, utilizing career resources to say, hey, you know what? I've been doing this. I'm ready to make a change, or I'm navigating a difficult situation at work, or I'd like to advance. Now, how do I get into that C-suite? What does that look like? And so, yeah, we're seeing them at all stages of their career. And it's certainly something that you never get rid of the MBA on your resume, and you never get rid of it with the experience that you've had. And so it's something that is always a benefit no matter where you are in your career journey.
Denise, if I pick up on a comment that Danielle had made of, something that you might look at in class and then apply it in the workplace the very next day. And for, candidates, so many of them, they like the sector they work in, they're really happy in the company that they're in. So perhaps, the exec MBA, they want to just go further, maybe, accelerate it. So with this ability to bring all of the learning back to work, is this something that becomes a very virtuous circle between your student and their employer?
Yes, I think so, especially for the employers that are very interested in what the student's doing and learning. And we talk with the students about how to do that, and without having it being a natural, a natural initiative from the student, and how a mentor can help them at work, but also an advocate or a sponsor identifies somebody maybe cross-functionally in another area that you can get to know, and have them get your paper into the C-suite. And what was that result? And that just increases the person's brand value to the current organization. And it really helps the student feel just, a sense of pride. It's not only the school grading me, but it's actually my own company grading me and giving me feedback on the things that I'm doing at work. So those that are very supportive, it's just really nice to hear those stories. And as well with alumni, the doors at McDonough, and I'm sure it's the same with my colleagues, but it's home for you, whether you're in the first day of school or 15 or 20 years later, coming back to the Career Center. We're going to support our alums, but then hearing their stories of how maybe that paper, maybe that initiative or that strategy class helped me then to lead the biggest strategy at my company. And what was that like? So we love hearing those stories. It just really fills your cup.
Right. And Denise, perhaps, the examples of, you must see it among your students of, because I was able to add this value, because I was able to bring this insight, they're already making progress through the exec MBA in their careers. I mean, they don't have to wait till the end to have that impact.
That's true. Even one of our current students, he took on an incredible promotion here in the district, and he's been working with a coach, and he's been working with his classmates, and just seeing him grow, just at the turn of year 2, he's got this incredible promotion. So it is really nice to see. It does happen at all stages. Yes. And I so love Mary Gray's comment of, take a moment to absorb everything when you first start, because it is so much on the students' plates. And so if we can help support and kind of take that pressure off a little, like she said, they might enjoy an ethics class that maybe they didn't know that they would have such an interest in. So the interests sort of change along the way. Yeah.
Knowing that level of intensity, the burden of work that you're taking on, Mary Gray had commented earlier, Danielle, she'd said, you've got an MBA on your resume. How do you think employers appreciate the exec MBA when they see it on somebody's resume? What does it say to them?
I think that from an employer perspective, they see that there's somebody who's committed to leadership, who is committed to growth, who is balancing a lot. They know the intensity of an executive MBA. And so they see that as somebody who can be very successful at balancing multiple priorities. And it's viewed very positively.
Yeah. So getting into your wonderful but very selective programs, perhaps, Mary Gray, with your colleagues in admissions, you ask any applicant, whether to the weekend or to the global executive MBA program, where does this fit in your personal and professional development and journey? But then they get into the program, all of these classmates with their own, talent and diversity, and they could go in so many directions. So what advice would you have for viewers as they think about the role that the EMBA might play as it fits into the bigger picture of their goals?
Yeah, so I mean, I think for many people, it's part of their career trajectory that they've always wanted to get the MBA. For others, they find the need and the desire, and like Danielle mentioned, I mean, employers value the MBA. It implies a certain level of leadership, critical thinking, critical analytical skills, and just a certain skill set that adds value to you. In your career at any stage. And so I think the important questions for you to ask yourself is what do I want this MBA experience to look like? Do I want to be in person? Do I want to be in a hybrid format? Is it important to me to live close to my school so I can participate in activities and speakers and things that are going outside of my individual program? And so really identifying, hey, what are your priorities in terms of what each program looks like, and then deciding, hey, okay, this is what the format and the program that I think is the right fit for me. You're not going to go wrong, generally speaking, with any program that Danielle and Denise, and I mean, everybody runs really great programs that I'm here with today. And so I think generally in conversations with admissions, hey, do I feel a right fit? And speaking with the alumni, do I feel a connection here? Does this align with the kind of career that I'm looking for? Does it align with my values, of those kind of things?
And as the world continues to evolve, we talked earlier about AI and GBT, of course, finance, all of these fields. How do you ensure, Denise, that coming back to school, what they're then learning, it sort of updates their knowledge, but is going to serve them in the next 10 years? Are you constantly reviewing the curriculum to make sure it reflects the constantly evolving economic environment?
Yes, definitely. I think there's just such a, it's twofold. It's first, just being really brilliant at the basics and going back and taking those basic courses, strategy and the leadership aspect, the finance aspect, leading change, etc. But then, like you said, how do you stay relevant and current? And that is through our electives. It's also through tailoring the materials within the classes, even in those fundamental classes, tailoring it to how the current economic environment or even the marketplace, not only just through AI and technology, but what's happening in the marketplace, and learn from it, especially in DC, where most of the policies created right down the street, and having access to our faculty who have access to some of these people to come in and speak to the students. So with our new format, we did increase the amount of electives we have, and that is really for that reason, so that we can be more diverse in the additional courses that they can take and take advantage of what's new and really could be around the corner as well. Yeah.
I'd like to talk about being members of your respective communities, and perhaps Danielle, starting with you. Goizueta, there's the full-time MBA. You have a fantastic master's in business analytics. So there are, 23-year-olds running around on the campus. There are 43-year-olds. Do you ensure that they mix? Because, there is a level of either mentoring or even reverse mentoring, and how, the ideas, the energy can all sort of bring together in this very wonderful synergy.
Yeah, I love that question, because it really is a broader community than just your cohort or just your specific program. And one thing Goizueta has been focused on is really staying in touch with the market. Like Denise was talking about, our professors are really staying ahead of the curve in terms of, here's ChatGPT, what's next? Here's this thing that's coming down the pipeline, what's next? And so they're constantly trying to innovate and really build something new around that. And so they teach across multiple programs, and there can be sharing of those classes. So if it's an elective, like Denise was talking about, there may be a BBA and an EMBA and an evening MBA that's in the class together. So there's definitely opportunities for that. We also have centers. So, and I'm sure that my colleagues have these as well, but we've got Center for Alternative Investments, the Entrepreneurship Center, Center for Business and Society. And so all of these centers are ways that students in all the different programs can get involved in their particular interests. And so they overlap in that sense too. And then we have an event on campus every Thursday night. It's called Kegs, very appropriate, keeping everyone at Goizueta social. And so those are times where people can mix across programs as well. I will say, you know, there's definitely the silos. So there's going to be our evening MBAs are on campus in the evenings, not during the day, and our weekend MBAs, you know, the executives, but there is an intentionality around trying to build this bigger Goizueta family.
Right. And I'm sure, Mary Gray, with the global executive MBA that takes them to Southeast Asia and beyond, just the international networks during the program. But, you know, for all of your schools, this is something that will continue to be part of their background for the rest of their lives, the rest of their careers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, focusing on, you know, international connections in business. I mean, we are all interconnected now across the globe. And so what does business look like in Santiago, Chile compared to Bangkok? And making those comparisons and learning deeper about their culture and the history and taking that into their workplaces and bringing that knowledge is really something that this adds value to you as a person, but also to your employer. And so certainly the international component. I mean, are they having fun? Absolutely, but they're certainly learning a lot and building relationships and a skill set that is attractive to employers and those that even want to grow their own businesses.
I mean, from what you've all shared, but even just the energy and the enthusiasm with which you share it, you know, I think you make such a compelling case for investing in yourself and that personal development. So perhaps my final question, next steps for any of our viewers, Denise, that say, right, you know, I really want to find out more. How can they reach out to Georgetown, you know, connect with alums, different events that you're organizing, really to find out more about the program?
Certainly a couple of ways. Anyone can connect with me on LinkedIn and reach out to me there. I've would offer that in a heartbeat, and I know my colleagues would as well. Georgetown, our website has an email address that they can also reach out for Executive MBA. Our admissions team always has these conversations and many times brings me into the conversation because of the focus on the career goals. So I would say either reach out to me or at the time that's right for you, go to the Georgetown University Executive MBA website, and there's information on how to contact us. But it was just a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. And Danielle, for Goizueta, I'm sure the same level of, you know, very high touch points, very personalized as they think about their next steps.
Yes, absolutely. I'll echo Denise and say anybody is welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn. Please add a note and let me know the session you're interested in Goizueta, just for that context. And then the website is probably the best, goizueta.emory.edu, and go to the admissions team. Is extremely high touch, and there are sessions that are being offered all the time, as I'm sure my colleagues are as well. So you can always sign up for a session. You can reach out and have an individual conversation to really uncover which program format or program in general would be best for you. But just don't hesitate to reach out. The conversations are welcomed.
Right. And the flexibility that all of you described, Mary Gray, whether they're on the West Coast or internationally, the same opportunities to contact you and perhaps graduates of the program.
Yeah, absolutely. Same goes here. And our admission team is on the road now. And so they're traveling across the country, hosting different events. And so certainly just check out the Fuqua website and like Danielle mentioned, just reach out and start the conversation.
Right. Well, we talked about having careers in your titles, and congratulations on your own careers, but just how you facilitate, you know, the opportunities for your students. It's a big investment, but I think the level of accompaniment, support for the highs and the lows, but certainly so many more highs, and you've been able to capture all of that for Centercourt. It's wonderful to have, you know, 3 world-class institutions on your programs joining our first EMBA festival. So Mary Gray and Denise, Danielle, thank you very, very much for being with us.
Thank you so much, Max.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.